Hi, today we're going to be learning about how glaciers cause erosion and deposition through a science experiment. For the experiment, you're going to need a cup. You're going to fill the cup with rocks and dirt in the bottom, and then you're going to fill it with water and you're going to freeze it overnight. The next day, you're going to cut the bottom of the cup off, and this will be the glacier that you use for the science experiment for your students. You'll also need all-purpose flour, and you will need olive oil. So what we use that for, you'll also need a cookie sheet. So right here you can see beneath I added the olive oil, which is going to kind of compact the flour, and the flour is going to act as the dirt and sediments for the students to observe during the experiment. So the learning outcome for this lesson is going to be students will be able to model a glacier and demonstrate how they cause erosion and deposition. The NGSS standard that's connected to this experiment is 4-ESS2-1, which is make observations and or measurements to provide evidence of the effects of weathering or the rate of erosion by water, ice, wind, or vegetation. So what I would like to do with my students to kind of get their prior knowledge on glaciers is ask them as students about a time they've ever been to the snow and what the difference between the snow that just fell to the ground is compared to the snow that's been there for a couple days. So then they have the idea of, okay, I know when snow falls, it's really soft and fluffy, but the snow over time, it gets compacted and it becomes ice. So then that could technically create a glacier. So I like to include that as prior knowledge for my students. Some of the vocabulary words relating to this experiment would be definitely erosion, deposition, plucking, abrasion, moraine. So there's terminal, end, and lateral moraine, which we'll go over during the science experiment, and striation, which is the scratching and gouging of the sediments as the glacier goes down. So a little bit of background about how glaciers form the land. The movement of a glacier changes the land beneath it. Although glaciers work slowly, they are a major force of erosion. So the two processes that you really want the students to learn about is the plucking and abrasion. So as a glacier flows over the land, it picks up rocks in the process, which is kind of the idea of our sample glacier. And then abrasion is many rocks remain at the bottom of the glacier, and the glacier drags them across the land. So this gouges and scratches the bedrock, which we'll go over in the experiment. And then we'll go over glacier deposition. So a glacier gathers up a huge amount of rock and soil as it erodes the land in its path. When a glacier melts, so maybe during the experiment you can see the rock kind of coming off, and that'll be kind of the example of deposition. So it deposits the sediments, it erodes from the land, creating various landforms. So these landforms remain for thousands of years after the glacier has melted. So during the experiment, you'll see, so as your glacier moves, let me give you a better picture. As your glacier moves, it pushes the layer of flour, just as real glaciers push dirt and rocks as they move, changing the landscape. You may have found that your glacier plowed flour along in front of it, which you can see from the video. So when you remove the glacier from the cookie sheet, there's a hill of flour that was pushed by the glacier. So when real glaciers leave a hill like this, it is called an end abrasion. So that's something you can kind of let your students observe. So it's called an end moraine or terminal moraine. Also, your mini glacier may have left little ridges along the side, so you can see each side of it, and that is called lateral moraine. So also you can see that it left streaks in the flour that it moved over. These are called striations, which are scratches that real glaciers make in the bedrock that they scrape. So this observation really gives your students a good idea of what the glacier looks like as it moves, even though technically the glacier is moving a lot slower than I'm pushing this one across. The students will be able to make connections. So one higher thinking question I might ask my questions is, what other natural elements cause erosion within our environment? So I'm looking for wind, I'm looking for water. We have a lot of irrigation down where we live, so that could also be a source of erosion. So I'm really looking for them to use that prior knowledge and really think about other types of erosion. One way you could assess the students, so this would be a great activity to maybe put the students in groups to let them really engage with each other and make those social emotional connections. And they're able to maybe write down what they're observing and how their observations connect to their vocabulary words and what they think, what word they think goes with each idea that's happening within this experiment. You could also ask them some questions to assess them at the end of the experiment. So you could ask them, what are the two ways in which glaciers erode Earth's surface? So I'm looking for plucking and abrasion. I'm really looking for those two words. And how does glacier deposition occur? So they'll really be able to observe that during this experiment. So that would be great. So that would be the end of this experiment. I think it's a great way for students to really connect and get that hands-on experiment and see how it's related to glaciers and how it's related to erosion and deposition. And as this melts, so you can already see that it's picking up, even though I added the mud and rocks at the bottom, you can see it picked up even more as I pushed along the flower. So it's a great way for students to really observe and make that connection. So thank you.